Uh, Thank you so much for coming in today, Dan. Today we're going to do part three. Really excited about the topic today, but quick introductions. I'm Chris Lee with Loan Depot Hawaii and the Veterans Mortgage Source, and today I have with me Dan Sepulveda from the Principal Broker from Real, and we're really excited today to talk about something that's like very daunting for men in our profession, people in our profession, and then especially prevalent from those that have served in the military. And that's something we like to call imposter syndrome. And then we're going to dive into a little bit about survivor's guilt. And then the floor is yours, Dan.
Yeah. So, I never really understood what imposter syndrome was. It's a term or a concept that kind of came to me, I guess, in the last, 2-3 years. Whereas it just kind of solidified some thoughts and perceptions that I had about life in general. So, to without having a dictionary in front of us, what is imposter syndrome? And to me, literally ever since I can remember, we can back this up to, speeches as a fifth grader at a fifth grade graduation, or we can flash forward to, running a fraternity in college, or we can flash forward to teaching hip pocket classes, trauma management in the military and leading sailors and Marines, and then launching past the military into the real estate industry. Every single step along the way, it felt inauthentic. It felt like I was like, why are you guys asking this of me? I am nobody. Like, I don't understand how you look at me as any kind of expert or any kind of person that can provide value. Like, it wasn't inherent to me that, hey, I belong in this place. I belong in this position. I belong in this, place and time to, deliver a speech or a class or anything like that. And it always felt so inauthentic and like I was lying to myself. And I'm sure you can relate.
100%, Dan. And then, it's that weird feeling where, coming up, everyone that enters the military at one point is like that new private or that new recruit or that new Joe, or if you're an officer, that new lieutenants or the new ensign or whatever have you. And you're walking in, bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, willing to learn, and then you always look up to that guy or that gal, and it's like, that's who I emulate. That's who I want to be. That's the version of myself I see one day. Before you know it, just out of pure osmosis, trial by fire, drinking through a fire hose, all the old school talk of just receiving a lot of information
Sure.
and going through it, you've become that guy.
Yep.
But you don't believe it.
Right.
Like, you literally think, well, I can't be that guy. Sergeant so-and-so, Captain so-and-so, that was that guy.
Yep.
I'm just this imposter. I'm a fake.
I'm a fraud.
I'm a fraud.
Yeah.
I don't deserve this recognition. I don't deserve this title. I'm not worthy. And I've said that countless amounts of times
Sure.
to myself. I'm not worthy. And how far from the truth are we? How far from reality are we when we say that to ourselves?
Yeah, and in the military, we're kind of, notorious for it, right? The self-deprecation, just talking trash. I mean, what better way to defend myself against and my ego than to trash talk myself, right? It's a defense mechanism, right? It's just like, hey, you can't cut my legs out from under me because I'm gonna do it myself, right? So,
you're not going to sabotage me. I'm going to sabotage myself.
Exactly. And that's kind of like, let's call it what it is. It's defense, right? So yeah, it's very interesting because, like you said, you find yourself in those positions, and I never really thought about that either. That literally you get to the point where you're in a position to create an impact, and by the powers at bay, it's because somebody has recognized in you that you have embodied the expertise, you have taken the time to have true understanding of a craft or a trade, a skill, And it has now become visible for somebody to have the audacity to say, hey, we need you to do this. We need you to step up. Can you lead this initiative? Can you lead this class? And yeah, of course, that's immediately met with like, why me? When we should be saying, try me, right? Try me. Like, let's go. We should be saying, I need to take this opportunity to grow, to expand, to become better. And we're going to get into it a little bit, but I mean, I think that's really like the first step in like, how do you go from I'm a fraud, I'm incompetent, I'm the wrong guy, to, like I said, try me. Like, this is where I belong, right? And I think it just starts with like changing that narrative in your own mind.
Oh yeah, and sometimes, that mindset is so unique because, like, the first thing that comes to mind is, fake it till you make it.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, you gotta
love
fake
it and hate it.
You gotta fake it till you make it. And like, let's like really peel back the onion.
Sure.
Let's really look back on that guy, that gal that we looked up to. They went through whatever leadership course that we went through to become that subject matter expert.
Sure.
They went through, a very brief explanation of why they're in that leadership role, but they owned it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that confidence, that just level of professionalism, that care, that follow-up, that amount of like intensity, that right amount of intensity that showed you like he or she knows exactly what they're talking about. Like, a lot of that may have been ingrained in them from just like, because that expertise that you see is backed by hundreds, thousands of hours of stuff you don't see.
Right.
Yeah. Like, I just look at, professional athletes. They just make what they do seem seamless
Mm-hmm.
and absolutely graceful.
Mm-hmm.
But the amount of sweat, tears, blood that it took to get to that position,
Yeah.
to perform in that 3 to 5 seconds, took years and years of training.
Yeah.
And then no one questions them because they're performing
Right.
at such a high level. And I think that's that anxiety that we all feel,
Right.
the performance anxiety. But we just kind of personified it into this weird imposter syndrome that has kind of crippled a lot of people, thinking that, I'm not worthy of sharing this knowledge, I'm not worthy of sharing this information, But let's really look at it. Every single person that has ever been put up was, it's their first time once.
Mm-hmm.
And they proved themselves to make it their second, third, 1,000th time later.
Right.
And then here we are sitting with, 30 plus years of experience
Yeah.
in leading troops into combat, caring and loving and truly being that having that agape, unconditional love for others beyond yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And yet still we feel like, was that enough?
Right. Yeah, and I don't think it's ever gonna change. It's always taking that moment of self-reflection and kind of dissecting everything around you to ground oneself, focus on the growth, focus on the step forward, and focus on that you are worthy. Like, you've earned this, right? You're talking about your athletes and everything, right? And for whatever reason, it came to mind that, like, even in this industry, right? You always kind of hear the concept of like, it's an art, not a science, or it's an art and a science, right? And it kind of reminds me of your athletes, right? Because, like, as you say, when Kobe was on the floor, right? I mean, the dude was an artist, right? Just, it's like, how do you do that, right? But what most fail to recognize is the science, the trials, the tribulations, the failed experiments that went into that artistic performance of excellence, right? So it's like, back it up, focus on the steps that got you to that point, right? We've been approached to speak, if I'm teaching combat medicine or if I'm teaching real estate, right? Well, we've been approached and asked to shed this knowledge because we've put in the science. You know what I mean? We've put in the work. We've put in the hours of gathering those skills and expertise to ever be approached to speak, right?
Oh yeah.
So you cannot denounce or decredit or not credit yourself for the work that you've already done. And I think that's like maybe that's one of the first steps to coping with imposter syndrome or working through imposter syndrome is just like, yes, this one event at this arbitrary time is intimidating. Like, who the heck am I? Why am I here? Right? But it's upon oneself to ground yourself and realize that, like, hey, it's because I have this many years of the work behind me, this many years of the study behind me, this many years of digging into the knowledge and the weeds of how to be an expert behind me. And only because of the work that I've already put in am I here today.
Yeah, it makes me think of like some great sayings. The expert has failed more times than the beginner has ever tried. Failure is not the opposite of success. It is several steps of success. So that's a great way to look at it. And obviously, coming from where we come from, we tend to hyper-focus on those failures.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what keeps us really like kind of grounded.
Yeah.
But in a pretty pathetic way.
Yeah.
Just because, like we can't celebrate our wins.
Right.
We can only think about our losses.
Yeah.
When we should be celebrating our wins.
Yeah.
And we want to share those wins, whether it be, transitioning out of the military, whether it be owning your first home, whether it be receiving the benefits that all these veterans deserve.
Yep.
It's a fantastic way to look at it. And then, and by no means do we think that we're going to solve imposter syndrome today.
No.
But it's a good way to, balance out the fact that we're all going through it.
Yeah.
And then, I need to humble myself to the fact that, like, hey, maybe I do deserve this.
Right.
And it's a fantastic way to look at balancing out like all those failures equals to success.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's funny you had mentioned a couple quotes and everything, and I love them, and they were so like cheesy back in the day, or it was a photo on the wall in an office, and you just gave it no thought, right? But like now it's just like, if somebody says, well, how'd you do this, or how did you succeed at that, and I'm just like, I failed forward every step of the way. I fell on my face. I sucked. Like, it was terrible. And then I regrouped, gathered what went well, gathered what did not, and tried again, right? So failing forward is so important with it. And like I said, you're not an imposter because you've already put in the work. And those failures, Michael Jordan has another one. He's just like, I've missed this many game-winning shots, missed this many free throws, missed this many. I have failed to hit the buzzer beater on this many occasions. And it is because of my failures that I win. You know what I mean? So it's just like it's you just have to change the narrative. You have to get out of your own head. You have to realize, why and how you've got to that point, because the reality is you've probably already put in the work.
Oh yeah. And then, I think that's a really good segue to our next point. And not to somber the mood or anything like that, because we just came into a really good spot. But we do sometimes go into that survivor guilt, mindset a lot, because we have had our friends pass away who aren't able to make it through this journey with us, and it's a pretty terrible thing. And then you can't, and it's this weird, unrelenting memory that we have that it's like, do we deserve the life that we live right now?
Right.
And it's absolutely terrifying sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Just because when you have that moment, and it's like sometimes all you have is your thoughts, which is a very dangerous place sometimes. Mm-hmm. And you think, why am I still here? And then that dark memories start becoming, why do I deserve to be here when they're gone? Right. And then I have my reason. And it's I mentioned it the very first time we talked. Mm-hmm. My beautiful son, Weston, it was my wife's idea to name him Weston after my best friend who passed away in 2017. Very dark time for me and my family. And I didn't know how to move forward. And it was weird because I felt like there were times where I didn't deserve to be here because he had so much potential.
Mm-hmm.
And then it took a long time. It took a long time to realize that growing out of that funk and then realizing that it is okay to grieve.
Mm-hmm.
It is okay to be guilty. It is okay to be sad. And it is okay that you're hurting. But just knowing that if you're thinking about what their potential could have been and what they expected from you, they wouldn't want you
Right.
sitting there feeling sorry for them, feeling sorry for their memory. And it was a really beautiful thing after my wife and I got married and we had our first son, and it was her idea to name him Weston after Weston Lee. And I have this daily reminder of this wonderful soul that was with us a long time ago who affected my life in a positive way.
Right.
I was his mentor. And he had told me several times back when he was alive that he looked up to me. And now I look up to him, literally and figuratively.
Yeah.
I look up to him. And it's a beautiful sentiment because I know that my son's not living up to his, in his boots or
Sure.
in his caliber, but, it's a fantastic way to remember him. And that energy, we were afraid, like, well, I don't want my Weston to, have this unrealistic expectation of who he should be. But it's an amazing thing to watch him grow up and then have that potential be reinstated back into my life.
Yeah.
And back in my wife's life.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah. So that survivor's guilt
Yeah.
turned into a beautiful thing for me, just because it was hard. It was real hard, but I get like real bad goosebumps thinking about it.
No, I think that's awesome, and and it's these conversations that are so necessary because like we all suffer through it, we all struggle with it in some form or fashion, and your story and your daily reminder and your son is part of your growth and your healing and your remembrance, right? And it's important to have these conversations because that's one way to do it, and there's other ways to do it, right? So one of the guys, I mean, we didn't lose him in combat, fortunately, but still crushes me to this day, man. But like one of my close friends, mentors, passed away on terminal leave. Terminal leave. You just served your country for 20 plus years, and when it's all said and done, and you're supposed to click the start button to life round 2. You know what I mean? Like freedom. He passed of a heat stroke, and it doesn't require combat or anything to experience any kind of survivor's guilt. And it's just like, why him? Why did this happen? This dude was the most selfless person I knew, just sickeningly selfless, and just gave to others without thought of oneself. And I'm just like, why would he be taken and not a scumbag like me who have had bouts of selfishness all the time. But one of the healing pieces, one of the processing of it, of the entire situation that worked for me is just like, well, why did and still do admire, look up to, hold him in such high regard. And then, you just kind of process that. You kind of think about it like, okay, so thought of others before self, gave to others before self, just relentlessly gave, right? And to cope with survivor's guilt and to cope with all the struggle. I was just like, you know what? That's what I admired about him, and that's what I'm going to do.
It's to service his memory, not
Yeah.
just continuously give.
Yeah.
And then that's a great sentiment, Dan. I appreciate you sharing that
Yeah.
one. That's you know, it doesn't have to be combat related. It doesn't have to be anything. You know, just knowing that if you're not living up to your potential, you know, you're not truly, you know, giving them the honor of their memory,
Right.
whoever they may be. And you know, we wake up and do things to honor their memory.
Mhm.
I unfortunately have too many memorial bracelets to wear, and I have my own stoic nature of how I remember them, whether it be through, you know, how I remember them through the fun times that we had, competing against each other. I have my own internal motivations,
Mhm.
and then there are days where I don't feel like I honor them.
Mhm.
And then, but just being able to have more days where you do
Right.
is always a win.
Yeah.
You know, have more good days than bad days, and I think you're living your best life at that point.
Mhm.
You know, yeah,
Always, you gotta, you take the moment to grieve, take the moment to, to process the loss, but, strongly encourage everybody, anyone, the next step has got to be the celebration of life. You know what I mean? And I think, like, you wouldn't know it, but a Mexican, right? But I think that's what's amazing about, the Day of the Dead, right? It's just like, hey, we're going to celebrate the life. This isn't a time of mourning, like Americans are really good about just mourning. Like, how are we going to process this? How are we going to get through it? Oh, we're going to cry. We're going to mourn, right? And then, there's the Hispanic side of my family that we actually celebrate the Day of the Dead. And it's just that. It's celebration, right? It's a reminder of the amazingness. It's a reminder of the good. It's a reminder of the service of that individual. And it's a moment to reflect and to see, okay, if I admired this person for so much, how can I be better? So
that's good.
It's got to celebrate.
That's good. That's real good. Oh my gosh. Like, yeah, life is a celebration. Every morning that you get to wake up, you should celebrate the fact that you have that. And then, it's one of those things where, because of how you served, when you served, there's so many great benefits out there to give back.
Mm-hmm.
And then, honestly, just because we've been put in leadership positions for so long, we're still learning about our own benefits.
Yeah.
We're still learning about ways to where we can truly celebrate life, truly get back, and have the ability to give back as well. Just because there's so many things out there, whether it be veteran benefits, whether it be having the ability to buy a home, whether it be the transitional period of setting yourself up for success, setting your family up for success, being able to not worry about certain things like, just compensation, health care, the next job, vocational rehabilitation, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
There's so many things out there that are there for you, and then we've become too proud to reach out for those. They're not handouts by any means. They're benefits and they're entitlements that you and I and everyone out there that's watching most likely deserves.
Mm-hmm.
And like, it's our duty and it's our responsibility as leaders,
Mm-hmm.
as men of our profession, to share that, cut down those walls of imposter syndrome, survivor's guilt, or
Mm-hmm.
whatever reason you have to be too proud or too prideful to accept these things,
Mm-hmm.
or request these things, because you do deserve it. You
Right.
1,000% deserve it. Your family deserves it. The memory of your friends and family and brothers and
Right.
sisters deserve it. And then I just love the fact that, at least in the veteran organizations and like the group that we get to proudly say that we're a part of, the ones that are active, we really do look out for one another,
Mm-hmm.
continue to look out for one another. And it's the ones that, you don't hear from that often, or the ones that are just so hard charging, sometimes you just don't ever see a bad day. And that one bad day could be just that overwhelmingly bad day. You just never know. And I just hope that, at the very least, if you get anything from this conversation, just like you have at least two guys right here that are going to listen and unconditionally, like, take time out of the day to make sure that, someone's out there listening to you and listening to your problems. And then, because there's going to be a solution. There's always going to be a solution. Every problem that we have in our life is temporary.
Mm-hmm.
There's no permanent problem.
Sure.
The only permanent problem may be your pride.
Yeah, and it's funny you say that, because it's like, when you got a problem, one of like the first filters, one of the first like stress tests you got to push it through is just like, who's got this problem right now? And generally speaking, it's very inward focused, right? Like, my ego is attacked, my pride is attacked, my reputation is attacked. It's very inward focused, right?
Oh, yeah.
And I think that's where we fail, right off the jump, right? Because we're focused on oneself. And I think an easy solution, almost 99+% of the time, or every time, is be outward focused, right? I think I heard it, maybe Jim Carrey said it or something, but said, I wish that people would be able to realize all the riches and their wealth and all their dreams come true, that it's not the fulfillment that you expect. He said the greatest currency there is the impact you have on other people's lives. And that's always stuck with me. And as fortunately, through investing in real estate and, investing in my future, everything like that, I've come a long way from working at McDonald's in 2002, right? So, I've, built a, little empire for my family, a little thing for my family. And, with every milestone hit, I'm just like, that's nothing. Like, there's no internal, I thought, like, once I hit, X amount of net worth or something like that, like, all my problems would be solved. I would be fulfilled. And it's just not the case. But a random person who calls me on the phone, he's just like, hey, is this HM1 Sepulveda? I'm like, well, actually, it's Chief. But actually, I'm out, so not even like, who's this? And he's just like, hey, I don't know if you remember, I was one of your boots back in 2014, and, I don't know why, but, something told me to call you and just say, thanks, thanks for being there for me, thanks for teaching, thanks for guiding. I really appreciate everything you did. And that phone call, those 30 seconds, have always been a greater payday than any paycheck, right?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Another little tidbit. Even if you're not hurting, just give your buddy a call, especially one that you haven't talked to in a long time. I would say give them a call. You care about them, and like, you see how they're doing on social media every now and then. Just give them a call. Mm-hmm. We're in the corners of the world, like literally Hawaii. We're as far away from mainland America as you can be, and I make it a conscious effort to stay close to my friends.
Yeah.
So, and then we always say, like, the hardest times that you spent with your best friends were always the best times, which is weird because I was like, I've never been more miserable.
Those are the worst days of my life, and I miss it.
I've never been more cold. I've never been more hungry.
Right.
I've never been more upset. I've never been more frustrated. But the people that you're with is pretty awesome, which kind of goes full circle now. Like, it's not a reason for imposter syndrome. It's not a reason for survivor's guilt, but I understand it now.
Yeah.
And then it's that weird circle of just like having that maturity and having that pride set aside to achieve those goals that you set for yourself. And even if they're not your goals, being able to give yourself the time and space to create goals to be successful
mm-hmm.
is the key. So
absolutely.
I think we're going to hit the points that we just talked about. We talked about survivor's guilt. We talked about imposter syndrome. We talked about coping mechanisms. We talked about ways to approach it, set your pride aside, great examples of how, we were that guy and then we were placed in that position way too soon. But really, that confidence, that ability to lead really set us apart. And
That expertise, that
yeah,
pride in craft.
Yep. Yep.
You've already done the work.
Yeah. It's a double-edged sword.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like it's going to keep us from getting the things we want, but yeah, but
it's true. That's a good point.
But it's a great way to look at it. I always value these talks, Dan. Thank you so much. I think that for all those that are listening to us, if they have any problems, whether it be what they want to see in the future, whether it's transitioning from the military, whether it be anything related to that, or at the very base level, like they just need someone to talk to. You and I are always there for them.
Always.
And then, yeah, you know how to reach us. Just give us a call. But we're going to keep this going for sure. I know that I appreciate these talks. It's always good to talk to someone of the same sheet. And it's always good to tell some war stories. And then get back to the good times.
Absolutely.
But, thanks again, Dan.
Appreciate it, man. Until next time.